I made $115,000 in 2024 as my first year in online business. Technically, the business launched in May, so 8 months, but same difference. And I'm not trying to sell you anything. I don't have a course, I don't have anything to sell you. And I'm not bragging or boasting about this because, to be honest, $100,000 is quite modest compared to most people in the online business space. But I genuinely wanted to make this video so I could help somebody who might be where I was a year ago. I know exactly how it feels to be broke, stuck in a time loop, feel like you're going to be working day in and day out for the rest of your life. And maybe a part of my story can inspire one of you to kind of do the same thing that I did. Now, just to show you that I'm credible, this is my dashboard where I receive my invoices, or where they get paid, my invoices get paid. And yes, this says $120,000, which is more than what I said, but you have to actually subtract these three because these were made in January. But if you subtract these three, it's going to equal $115,000. And then another point of proof is this is one of my bank accounts. We'll just refresh this a couple times for you. It should say $56,695. That alone is crazy because at the beginning of last year, I was at zero. Now, for context, I was in the music industry for over 10 years. I toured the US, I produced some very successful records, and I put out a decent sized catalog as an independent artist. But regardless of all that stuff, somehow it never equated to making any money. And I know that money isn't all that, but we need money to live. And when you're struggling to pay the bills or even eat food, trust me, money's a problem. But in February of last year, I had to make one of the toughest decisions of my entire life and leave all of that behind. The entire music industry, music itself, I had to leave it all behind. Now, if you knew me before this, you'd know that leaving the music industry is something I would never do. I've been playing music since I was 7 years old. I've pursued it professionally for about 14 years or so. That was what I did. I was the music guy. But I had to realize that music isn't my entire identity. Maybe to those around me, maybe that's what they think my entire identity is. But deep down, it's just something that I do. It's a part of who I am, but it's not me as a person. And just because you commit to something for so long, it does not mean that you're obligated to continue pursuing it. So being 29 years old, still broke, overworked, and in a situation where your girlfriend is essentially paying for your basic necessities to live, I had to make a change. Now, let me take you back a little bit further because that information is absolutely key in understanding why I was successful my very first year in online business. On April 7th of 2022, I woke up on a friend's couch with alcohol poisoning and no recollection of how I got there. And after running outside into his backyard, laying down on my stomach and puking my guts up for 5 hours straight, I decided that I was never gonna be put in this situation ever again. I was never gonna put myself in that situation ever again. So from that moment on, I stopped going to the bar every single week. I cleaned up my habits and I basically got back on my personal development journey for the third time. And on that journey, I not only began to transform into becoming a better version of myself, but along the way, I lost friends. I made people very angry and I worried a lot of the people who cared about me. But I knew what I was doing was right, so I just dealt with it and I kept moving forward. Now, these three things that I fixed during that time period are the very things that cause people to be angry at me, worry about me, etc. But they are also the things that took me from being self-destructive to being self-constructive. And those three things were my physical diet, the things that I was eating, my mental diet, the information that I was consuming, and my spiritual diet, the energy and the people that I surrounded myself with. All I wanted to do was learn all the time. I just wanted to learn how to become better, how to find freedom, and how to build a life where I was in control and the dollar wasn't. And if anything ever stood in that path of me trying to get there, I would either completely destroy it or gracefully push it aside so I could continue going forward. Now, the practical tips for those three things are: 1, eat whole, nutritious foods to feed your physical diet. Because when you eat trash, it clouds your mind and it causes sickness, and none of those things are good for actually improving. Read books about habits, mindset, principles, money to feed your mental diet. Because when you consume nothing but entertainment and bullshit, it fries your brain. Even me, as a musician who's grown up around music, played music his whole life, I stopped listening to music because it wasn't constructive. It was either putting me in an emotional state or bringing me down some kind of memory or something like that. It just wasn't good for me to actually learn. So I cut out all music and I listened to nothing but podcasts and audiobooks. Now, the last one's a little more difficult because when you start to cut people out of your life or love them from a distance, you essentially enter a domain of what I call purgatory. And that purgatory phase to me is where you essentially don't fit in with the old crowd anymore, your old friends, and you also haven't become the person to fit in with the new friends that you want to have. And on top of that, you have no clue where to find them. So what I did during this time was I found mentors online that I really, really resonated with. I watched a bunch of different videos of people talking about the things I was interested in, money, mindset, philosophy, those types of things. And I found the ones that when they would speak, I would really connect with them, and I would just consume their content day in and day out. Now, although that relationship was obviously one way, every time I would do this, I would imagine myself in a room with that person and they're speaking directly to me and they're trying to help me out of my situation. It was like we were friends, but we weren't. But I was essentially hanging out with those people because I would just consume their content, their words, their philosophy, their ideas all day. And that's how I placed myself in the room with people I wanted to be around. Of course, it wasn't physical, but it worked. Now, fast forward to November of 2023. This is about 3 months before I decided to leave the music industry. I ended up buying a $1,500 course on how to start, build, and scale an SMMA. And before you click off this video is not about SMMA. I don't do SMMA, okay? So I just wanted to make that very clear. But that was the thing, the shiny object, the opportunity that I felt interested at the time from all the things that I was looking at on the internet. But during my time of transformation, not only was I juggling all of the music stuff, but I was also researching and studying ways to make money online on the side. And SMMA was the thing that kind of came across my lap and I felt like I was interested in it. Those 3 months from November to February passed and I did all of the in the weeds stuff, like building a website, coming up with a company name, making social media accounts for the company, all the stuff that doesn't really matter. It's just bullshit, but you feel like in the beginning it's the things you need to do to start making money. And by the time February rolled around, I just couldn't handle it anymore. All the music stuff I was doing, plus learning how to run and start an online business, plus trying to actually start this business on the side of all of that, it just led to extreme burnout. It was terrible. So in result, it caused me to leave the music industry. But it wasn't to just quit and do nothing. It was really just to quit and go all in on this SMMA thing. Side note, because I'm not going to go into SMMA, I tried it for a week and I absolutely hated it, so I quit doing it. Okay, now that we're back at square one, I want you to understand why it's so important for you to understand that backstory. Because if I just came out of the gate and said, this is what I did, step 1, 2, and 3, for one, you've never heard of me before. And it's gonna make me look like I was just this random guy who tried online business one time or something like that and it all worked, when that's the furthest thing from the truth. Because the reality of the situation is that none of this success, or whatever you want to call it, would have happened at all if I did not go through the years prior of actually becoming the person capable of doing this thing. So the very first step for me really was becoming a better version of myself. And there's a reason why so many successful people preach mindset, mindset, mindset. There's got to be something to it at that point if they're all saying it. And it is because mindset is the most fundamental principle and life-altering step out of all of them, okay? If you don't have the mental fortitude to handle the ups and downs of business, you're not going to make it, okay? You're just not going to understand it either, okay? So it's very important that you become a better version of yourself and you really work on this. I know people who, eat terrible, or maybe don't have the best energy connection, whatever it is, but it's always with this. Like, you have to learn how to think and think properly and guard your mind from all the bullshit that's out there. And then the next thing that I did was I focused on one thing, just one thing. It's like saying no to a bunch of girls to make one relationship work. All of these different things could probably make you a lot of money. It can make you rich, whatever that may be. But none of them are gonna make you rich if you try to focus on all of them at the exact same time. So just focus on one thing. Then the next thing that I did was learn to understand money. Okay, now as an example, if I want to play a guitar, and I have one right here, if you want to learn how to play guitar, you first have to understand it. Like, take away all of your knowledge of a guitar right now. If you didn't understand anything, the first thing you're going to be like, well, how does it make a sound? And you're not even going to know that this does that to make a sound, and you have to press a fret to make it, you have to understand the guitar to effectively play it. And money's no different. You have to understand how money operates, how money works, how the system of money works if you want to play the money game and if you want to play it at a high level. Okay, now the next thing I needed was something to sell. Every time you've ever received money in your life, it was because you either sold your time, like going to a job, or you sold a random item laying around your house on Facebook Marketplace. And then of course there's the rare occurrence where you get gifts where people just give you money, but that's not what we're talking about here, okay? You had something to sell. Money doesn't just appear out of thin air. You have to have something valuable to exchange for that money. And the last thing that I needed was people or an audience to sell that thing to. Now this can be done with paid ads by spending money to put your product or your service in front of people's eyeballs, or this can be done by having an organic audience where you post organic content, and when you post that content, it distributes to those eyeballs. I personally didn't have a large audience, or at least a large enough audience to make a difference, and I sure as hell didn't have any money. So what I did was I leveraged somebody else's audience. I found a creator who was making really good educational content and who had built a following with that content in the process. And doing this would allow me to help that creator sell stuff to his audience because it already existed, and I would just make a profit in the process. So before this gets confusing, I had a product. My product that I was selling was my time, a service, or my knowledge to actually build a product for him and have it sold to his audience. When his audience would pay him for that product, I would earn commission on that because I helped him build the product and distribute it to his audience. Okay, I hope that's making sense. Anyways, now throughout that entire process, there are of course some in-depth steps to go from, for one, just reaching out to a creator and saying, hey, I can help you make money, to us actually locking in and wanting to work, or him wanting to work with me. And then the process of actually building and launching a product. Like, yes, there's a lot of in-depth stuff there, but to simplify it, he had already been making educational content, very good educational content that taught people a certain skill. So they already trusted him because he's knowledgeable about the thing. They go to him to learn the thing. All I had to do was help him build a product that would allow those people to get more intimate access to him, as well as pair it with like a program that taught the exact same thing he was already teaching for free, but teach it much more in depth and in a human way. Then we put a price on it that was more than fair compared to the value that it provided. And then finally, we had him make content that told his audience that he had a product to sell. Now, this specific product that we made was $50, but it was recurring or a subscription based. So they would spend $50, and if they wanted to stay in the program, they would spend $50 every single month. Now, when we first launched this product, we did about $12,000, maybe a little bit over $12,000 in revenue for the entire month. And because I came into his ecosystem, he had no business. I built this business for him from the ground up. Of course, he also built a lot of things like the program and stuff like that, but I helped him form a business and make him money. I earned 50%. I was basically a co-owner of this business. So I made $6,000 that very first month. Now, this was the most money I'd ever made in my life. I've never made $6,000 in one single month. The most money I'd ever made was $4,000, and I was making that kind of consistently when I was on tour with another band. But yeah, I mean, $6,000, it was life-changing because, like, imagine I came from nothing. I was making $0. My girlfriend was helping me pay the bills, and now I had physically seen the fruits of my labor, all the hard work that I had been putting in, and there was money in my bank account to show for that. So with that very first payout, I was able to pay back a bunch of friends who had loaned me money, and I was able to get back on my feet all within a 30-day time period. I was over the moon, like over the moon. I could not believe that this was happening. And I mean this when I say that my life changed at that 6K mark. The other amounts of money that I made the entire year, like the whole 115K, yes, it's awesome, it's life-changing, but the most life-changing moment was that very first 6K. It was the most money I'd ever made, and it was plenty of money to, one, be able to pay my friends back and eat and not have to stress about money anymore. That was one of the most freeing feelings I'd ever felt in my entire life. Now, of course, it doesn't stop there. Throughout the entire year of 2024, I kept essentially promoting this product and trying to refine the product over time. I messed up quite a few times. I did things wrong, but I let that failure teach me what not to do the next time I had to do it. And with that, the second month I made 8K, the third month 13K, yeah, it was 13K. Then I made 16K, 14K, 17K, 15K, and then ended December with 26K profit. This is not revenue for the business. This is literally the amount of money that I was taking home. And of course, there are a ton of in-depth steps that I took and things that I did to actually continue the growth of the business. But this is the exact concept and the way that I was able to make $115,000 my very first year in business. Now, I'll end with this. It's not about the business model, because literally all business models work. You just have to become the person capable of making it work, because the entire battle is not about the things that you do to get there. It's simply just not giving up while you're trying to figure out the right thing to do. I mean, think about it this way. Most people go through years and years of formal education to hopefully graduate and hopefully get an opportunity to get a job where they have to work all the time to hopefully then make about this much money. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, maybe a lot less. So you have to treat making money online the exact same way. Yet most people give up on online business if they don't see a 10K month in 30 days. It's absurd. It makes no sense. And although this is the result of my first year in online business, I'd honestly argue it was the 10 plus, 15 plus years prior to this trying to make my music business work and other things that I got into that I just didn't dive into in this video that built me up and taught me how to become the person capable of making this happen. So don't expect overnight success. If I would have gave up. And I did almost give up. But I am so, so grateful that I did not do that. And if you haven't noticed by now, the view behind me, I am in beautiful Miami, Florida. I come from a small town in Texas, East Texas, 600 people. And I was living there just before I moved here 3 months ago in November, okay? My life has absolutely changed. And I'm willing to bet that yours can too. Deuces.